Well, that's Post Malone. Okay, so maybe that's not an accurate depiction of Post Malone, but that's around where he started. Post Malone really began with that, but back then he wasn't really 100% pursuing music. In fact, it seems like he made that as a joke. It was really around the late 2010s Post Malone started to more discover his sound and interest in music. Eventually, Post would dip into the rap and hip-hop scene with the release of White Iverson. This track was incredibly catchy, and it was enough to get him enough attention to a point where he would go on to release his first studio album, Stoney. Stoney was an album that really helped Post Malone propel his career from start out to this massive artist. And so 2 years after the release of Stoney, Post Malone released Beer Bongs and Bentleys. While not exactly as good as Stoney, it was an album where we started to hear what Post Malone's sound was. And it sounded like he was teetering less from hip-hop and more into R&B punk rock. I find calling Post Malone a rapper really difficult because with Post Malone, he tends to make his music sound very grungy, very rock-like, and nowhere is that more apparent than on his release of Hollywood's Bleeding back in 2019, his third studio album. This album is certainly different from his predecessors. While he is using the hip-hop elements on songs like Enemies and songs like On the Road, he's bringing a lot more rock elements into this album. We see that on Take What You Want with Ozzy Osbourne. I'm already pulling the big names because, of course, this was a huge song. A song that never got a music video, and I'm still kind of upset about it. But that's beside the point. Staring at the Sun is an R&B style track, but it has those rockish elements. I felt throughout the entire album it was deviating from the hip-hop sound, or at least the traditional hip-hop sound. And given that Post Malone is known for being a hip-hop artist, it's kind of interesting seeing him take this route with his music. When I first listened to this album, I loved it. It was incredible, but revisiting it all these years later, I think it pushes the limits of genre bending. Something about, Hollywood's Bleeding, a very somber, dark track that I think helps encapsulate what Post Malone is trying to do when it comes to setting the tone for this album. It's very dark, very emo. The album itself tends to either be hit or miss. I find a lot of songs I either like or don't like. Hollywood's Bleeding, I like. Then Saint-Tropez. Enemies, I like. And then Allergic. That's just how I felt. It was just back and forth. I liked it or I didn't like it. That's just how it went for the entire album. And dare I say, while I do think it is one of Post Malone's better entries, I still wouldn't call this his best work. I think we still have yet to see the best Post Malone, the best of his music. And I think we are getting that with songs like Circles, Goodbyes, the re-release of Sunflower, and Wow. I think the choice to incorporate singles released from a year ago is a weird choice. Honestly, Sunflower and Wow being on this album felt weird to me. Circles and Goodbyes released closer to the album, so that makes sense. But Sunflower and Wow, it's way too late to release these singles with the album. You might as well have just made it like a hint at what was coming up. With that said, Post Malone really hit the nail on the head here with this project. It was certainly enjoyable to listen to. That said, don't be shocked if you go into this album with kind of like a hit or miss style kind of attitude. It will either leave you really satisfied if you're a fan of rock and hip hop, or it will leave you confused, kind of scratching your head after listening to it, being like, what did I just listen to? Today, don't knock it until you try it. I personally think this is worth checking out. Post Malone's Hollywood's Bleeding gets a 3 scratches out of 5. I think this was a great listen, but I think it's kind of teetering with such new elements for Post Malone that it's just so weird for the casual fan. Definitely worth a listen, but completely different from what we've heard from Post Malone in the past.